Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to bring you today's video. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get started. On March 8, 2014, at 0:41 a.m., Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 was preparing to depart from Kuala Lumpur International Airport towards Beijing. This was a flight that was seen as part of the routine of air travel. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members. Most of the passengers were Chinese, but there were also many others from different nationalities. The departure went smoothly, with typical airport procedures followed. The final preparations at the airport were completed, passengers took their seats, and the flight began once the aircraft received clearance for takeoff. The weather was quite favorable, and there were no difficulties with the flight. Most passengers were expecting a calm journey, hoping to rest during the night and sleep without thinking about their arrival in Beijing. After takeoff, the aircraft was cruising at an altitude of 10,000 feet, leaving behind the night view of Kuala Lumpur. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The pilots followed the flight plan and the plane was on its scheduled route. The flight proceeded as normal, with all systems working properly. Passengers began to notice that it was a smooth flight, with cabin crew offering refreshments. At 1:19 a.m., the last message was received from the plane. The pilots, in a message from the cockpit, said, "Good night, Malaysia 370," as they sent their final greeting to air traffic control. After that moment, radar contact with the aircraft was lost. A period of hours-long communication blackout began. Initially, this was thought to be a temporary technical glitch, but it quickly became apparent that the flight had disappeared for another reason. At this point, Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control had lost contact with MH370. The control towers received no response from the aircraft. The plane had disappeared from radar, but no one knew exactly what had happened. At that time, the aircraft had passed about 200 nautical miles from the Malaysian coastline, leaving Malaysian airspace and entering the Gulf of Thailand. Air traffic controllers realized that the aircraft had disappeared from all radar screens after the last message from the cockpit. Immediately after this, a state of panic began to unfold. The plane was missing, and there was no trace of it. Local air traffic control immediately informed Malaysia's defense and security units. A search operation was launched that lasted for hours. At that moment, the disappearance of MH370 was an extremely rare event. A loss of flight like this sent shockwaves throughout the aviation sector and across the world. Despite the initial impression that everything was normal in the first few hours after takeoff, the plane's disappearance from radar shattered that sense of security. People were eagerly waiting for any negative development related to the plane to be resolved as quickly as possible. However, what would unfold was a much more complex and profound mystery, one that no one could have predicted. On March 8, 2014, at 1:19 a.m., Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 transmitted its last message from the cockpit. "Good night, Malaysia 370. This brief message gave the impression that the flight was still proceeding normally. However, it was also the final message from the flight. At that moment, there was no further response from the cockpit. This was the first signal that the plane had disappeared. At 1:21 a.m., the plane's radar traces vanished. The aircraft suddenly became invisible in the air. Local air traffic control, upon losing communication with MH370, initially thought it could be a minor technical glitch or a temporary signal loss. However, it soon became clear that this was a far more serious issue. The Aviation control towers received no response from the aircraft after the last signal. Immediate action was taken, and search and rescue operations were initiated. However, by this point, the plane had already exited local airspace and was heading into the Gulf of Thailand. The initial point where the aircraft disappeared from radar was about 200 nautical miles from the Malaysian coastline. After communication was lost, data began to emerge indicating that the aircraft had changed direction and deviated from its flight path. The first alarm after the disappearance was based on information that the plane had suddenly changed course and deviated from its route. Air traffic control initially didn't know what to do, as there were no indications of a normal deviation or maneuver in the flight path. Based on the last received signal, it appeared the plane was gradually moving away from its departure point. However, such a disappearance after a seemingly normal takeoff marked a revolutionary moment in the aviation industry. A search operation lasting for hours was launched. Neighboring countries, including Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, began scanning the area where the plane disappeared. Shortly afterward, a large-scale search operation was initiated in the oceanic areas. Air and sea vehicles participated in the search efforts. However, the area where MH370 disappeared was so vast that, despite the intensity of the operation, no findings could be discovered. The search team tried to find signs of the plane's crash, but all they encountered was an empty ocean and countless unknowns. The rescue teams carefully scoured the area where the flight had vanished. They made great efforts to find aircraft debris or a signal, but after several days, no concrete evidence could be found. The search efforts were particularly challenging due to the vastness of the area and the depth of the ocean. Every day a new hypothesis was proposed, but no concrete information about the cause of the plane's disappearance was obtained. The responses given by local air traffic control from the moment contact with the aircraft was lost, along with the investigations carried out by international search teams, deeply shook the world. Initial statements after the plane's disappearance suggested that it might have changed course due to a malfunction or breakdown. However, within hours, the signals from the area where MH370 had disappeared became even more complex, leading to the thought that the flight might have completely gone out of control. At that time, a theory spread quickly. The plane might have somehow disappeared in a controlled manner. Air traffic control began receiving clues that MH370 had changed course during the communication loss. Efforts to gather more information based on security cameras or other sources at the airport from where the plane took off increased rapidly. One thing was clear. The disappearance of MH370 was not just an aircraft accident. It was not simply a missing plane. This event had become one of the greatest mysteries in aviation, and as time went on, this mystery would deepen further. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 sent shockwaves not only through the aviation community, but also across the globe. A plane had vanished during a routine flight, and no information about the aircraft or any trace of wreckage had been found. Everyone believed there was a mystery behind the unanswered questions about the missing plane. This mystery quickly became one of the most important topics in the world's media. From the moment of its disappearance, Flight MH370 attracted intense media attention worldwide. News channels, newspapers, and websites began following developments minute by minute after the plane's disappearance. International media outlets filled with news, speculation, and theories, drawing the attention of the entire world. Millions of people were trying to understand where the plane had gone and what had happened. For the families, this process was filled with terrifying uncertainty. Not having any information, even the smallest detail, about their missing loved ones became an unbearable emotional and mental burden. Families tried to make their voices heard worldwide to learn the fate of their lost planes and loved ones. Each new development gave them hope, but also dragged them into an even deeper uncertainty. Search efforts began with a global scope. Many countries sent search teams to find the aircraft wreckage, and a wide area of the ocean was scanned. However, despite the vast search operations, no trace of the plane was found. As hours passed, hopes of finding a signal or wreckage from the plane dwindled. The ocean, with its immense size, seemed to swallow everything, creating a mystery. The area where the plane disappeared appeared to be lost in the depths of the ocean, and with each passing day, the teams found no concrete evidence of the plane. The media's intensification of the story led to an increase in speculation. Initially, various theories about the missing plane began to emerge. At the forefront was the idea that the flight might have been lost due to a terrorist attack. The possibility that the plane had been hijacked by a terrorist group quickly became a prominent topic in world news. The absence of any tangible findings in the search efforts suggested that there might have been a deliberate act behind the flight's disappearance. Another theory was that a technical malfunction, or pilot error, might have been responsible. The fact that all systems had worked smoothly after takeoff, the professionalism of the pilots, and the good condition of the plane raised doubts about this theory. After the plane disappeared from radar screens, some analysts suggested that the flight might have gone out of control and changed course due to pilot error. However, the unexplained details of such an accident scenario and the uncertainty surrounding the plane's disappearance raised yet another question every day. Another speculation was that there might have been sabotage or murder behind the plane's disappearance. The pilots' and crew members' personal histories, past work relationships, and connections were also investigated. However, no concrete evidence was found. Each new theory led to a series of questions and unresolved situations related to the missing plane. That night, news and predictions about MH370 spread rapidly around the world. China, in particular, was closely following the event due to the fact that a large portion of the passengers were Chinese. As the families intensified their efforts to learn the fate of their missing loved ones, governments also sought to manage the global response to the incident effectively. The event had a significant diplomatic dimension. The international community began to apply great pressure to gain more information regarding the missing plane and the missing people. The world began to accept MH370's disappearance as perhaps the greatest mystery in aviation. At that moment, trust in air transportation systems was shaken, and new security measures and policy changes in aviation came to the forefront. Shortly after the plane's disappearance, work began on new technologies that would increase the trackability of aircraft. Every day, speculations increased, and theories became more varied. However, even after a year, no concrete results had been found from the search efforts in the area where MH370 disappeared. This became not just the story of a missing plane, but also the story of a lost sense of security and uncertainty. As people continued to search for more information about the missing plane, there was an even bigger question. What really happened? After the disappearance of MH370, a large-scale search operation was launched worldwide. With each passing day, it became increasingly difficult for rescue teams to scan the vast areas where the plane had disappeared. Governments and aviation experts predicted that the missing plane could be deep in the Indian Ocean and intensified the search operations over this vast ocean. However, the ocean's enormous size and challenging conditions made these search efforts nearly impossible. The search operations were initially based on signals obtained from the last known position of the plane. The last signal received from the plane showed its position hours earlier, and this data aimed to narrow down the area where the missing plane could be. However, scanning these areas was a very challenging task for the search team. While dealing with large waves and harsh weather conditions in the Indian Ocean, equipment diving into the ocean's depths worked tirelessly for hours to find the plane's wreckage. The search began with experts and equipped teams from around the world. Initially, many national and international organizations, including Malaysia, China, Australia, and others, joined the search efforts. The search area was so vast that it was nearly impossible to make a clear prediction about where the plane's wreckage might be. Therefore, teams scanned thousands of square kilometers of the ocean. Many submarines, sonar systems, and satellite images were used to explore the depths of the ocean. However, with each passing day, finding any trace in this enormous area became extremely difficult. Despite the intensive efforts of the search teams, only a few small pieces and some bird feathers were found. As research continued in the ocean's depths, the lack of findings not only lowered the morale of the teams, but also weakened the hopes of the whole world regarding the missing plane. The failure to locate any wreckage was devastating, especially for the families of the passengers on the missing plane. As days passed, the international community realized that the situation was becoming even more complicated. International experts narrowed the search to a smaller area, based on where the last signal from the plane was received, and deeper investigations were launched in this area. For this, submarines and new technologies were used to scan the ocean floor. However, Each new search failed to provide definitive evidence that the missing parts and wreckage found in these areas belonged to the lost plane. The search team, despite working with different theories, was disappointed after failing to find any conclusive evidence. Nevertheless, the countries participating in the search continued their efforts with the understanding that they bore a great responsibility on behalf of humanity. Australia became one of the countries leading the largest search operation for the missing plane, sending advanced submarine vehicles to conduct investigations in the ocean's depths. However, it became clear that such a large-scale search operation was insufficient, given the vast size and depth of the ocean. This process turned into one of the most expensive and complex search operations in aviation history. As time passed, the scope of the search also changed. Although the search area was gradually narrowed, findings were still scarce. Only a few small pieces, some metal fragments thought to belong to part of the plane, and tire tracks were found, but no large wreckage pieces were recovered, while the countries involved in the search rejoiced at every new piece of information. And finding, in reality, no concrete evidence emerged. On one hand, different theories were being discussed about the disappearance of flight MH370, such as terrorism, sabotage, pilot error, or some other factor. However, these remained mere speculations. The plane, lost in the depths of the ocean, continued to remain a legend with each passing day. Governments and research teams fought to find more missing pieces year after year, but the mystery of the great loss became a global enigma. Ultimately, the disappearance of flight MH370 became not just a plane crash, but one of the greatest aviation mysteries in world history. Despite the international search efforts and deep ocean scans, attempts to gather more information about the plane unfortunately remained surrounded by uncertainty. The plane, lost in the ocean, gradually became an unsolvable secret. Approximately a year after the disappearance of flight MH370, in 2015, the search efforts worldwide intensified. However, a major shock occurred when the first solid findings were discovered on the coast of Madagascar. These findings provided a crucial clue regarding the missing plane. The discovery of wreckage in the ocean confirmed that the plane had crashed and that the flight had somehow ended. But these findings still did not provide any concrete information about exactly where the plane had crashed. A piece found on La Réunion Island, part of Madagascar, was soon confirmed to belong to the MH370 plane. This piece was part of the plane's wing, and after the crash it had been drifting in the ocean for a year. When experts examined the piece, they concluded it was the first major part to have fallen off the plane and into the ocean. This discovery marked an important milestone in the effort to learn more about the missing plane. However, these findings were just the beginning. The exact location where the plane had disappeared was still unknown, while this piece found on La Réunion Island was the first solid finding of the plane's wreckage. The question of where MH370 had crashed remained unanswered. This discovery on the shores of Madagascar indicated that the plane's wreckage could have been spread across the ocean, but where these parts had come from and the route they had followed while drifting in the ocean were still not clear. The findings sparked a huge debate worldwide. More theories about the cause of MH370's disappearance and how the flight ended began to surface. Initially, it was thought that the flight might have disappeared due to an accident, but with the discovery of the wreckage, these theories began to be seriously questioned. Specifically, some aviation experts suggested that the plane's disappearance might not have been an accident but rather a deliberate act of crashing. According to some theories, the pilots of MH370 or another group might have intentionally taken control of the plane and somehow caused it to crash into the ocean. This theory developed after analyzing the flight route and path the plane took after leaving the local airspace. It was believed that the plane had gone off course in a way that could not be explained by a normal accident, and this event was considered a planned and deliberate action. Such a theory brought up possibilities such as sabotage or a suicide attempt behind the crash. Additionally, some theories suggested that MH370's disappearance could have been the result of a terrorist attack or hijacking. However, this theory was not strongly supported by solid evidence uncovered during the in-depth investigations into the missing plane. The identities of the passengers the crew's backgrounds, and other research into the matter led to the dismissal of such possibilities. The likelihood of a terrorist attack or hijacking quickly faded into the background. With the discovery of wreckage, one of the most discussed theories in the aviation world was that the plane's pilot may have consciously caused the tragic outcome. Given the significant responsibility pilots have for ensuring the safety of the aircraft and managing the flight, the possibility that the pilots intentionally brought the plane down was seriously considered by a group of experts. In particular, the personal situation and history of Captain Zahari Shah seemed to bolster this theory. Some experts claimed that the pilot deliberately diverted the plane due to emotional or psychological reasons. These theories caused a global stir and deepened the mystery of MH370's disappearance. However, each new theory highlighted the need to better understand how the flight went missing and to uncover more information about the plane. The findings on La Réunion Island initially sparked hope, but the fact that they did not provide any definitive answer about the exact location of the missing plane deeply shocked the aviation community and the families involved. The mystery of the plane lost in the ocean had become an ongoing search and had grown even more complex. Search efforts continued to narrow down the area where the plane disappeared and to discover new pieces of wreckage in the ocean's depths. However, despite years of efforts, these attempts did not lead to a clear conclusion about where the missing plane had crashed. The findings along the shores of Madagascar, which raised many more questions about the plane, once again demonstrated how difficult it was to solve the mystery behind MH370's disappearance. Years after the disappearance of Flight MH370, the incident remains one of the greatest aviation mysteries in the world. The plane, which took off from Kuala Lumpur heading for Beijing on March 8, 2014, triggered widespread panic, and even after its disappearance, it continued to raise a series of complex questions and theories. Every effort made to solve the mystery has fallen short. The true cause of the plane's disappearance remains undetermined, and each passing year makes the mystery even more baffling, creating a deeply challenging situation for the families of the missing passengers and the aviation community. The disappearance of MH370 represents far more than just a plane crash. An aircraft lost in the sky was a shocking event for the entire world. However, the lack of clarity surrounding the truth about this missing plane led to the rise of various theories worldwide. Initially, it was thought that the plane's disappearance was the result of a simple accident, but the lack of any findings during the first weeks of search efforts suggested that the crash might have been caused by something else. Over time, many different theories emerged regarding the disappearance of the flight. Among the most prominent theories was the claim that the pilot had intentionally directed the plane to its tragic end. Some aviation experts proposed that the disappearance of MH370 was a deliberate act. Those supporting this theory speculated that the captain of the plane had consciously diverted the flight and caused the aircraft to crash into the ocean by losing control. The plane deviated from its expected flight path unexpectedly, and this behavior suggested that it might have been intentionally redirected. The personal history of Captain Zahari Shah and his actions during the flight were brought up by some as supporting evidence for this theory. However, no conclusive proof was found, and only suspicions and speculation continued. Another theory was that the disappearance of the plane could have been caused by a technical malfunction or mechanical failure. The area where MH370 disappeared deep within the ocean led to this theory gaining traction. According to this theory, the plane might have gone off course due to a mechanical issue, which could have caused it to crash. However, data from the plane indicated that the systems had been operational from the start of the flight, and that no major malfunctions had occurred. This weakened the credibility of the theory. The possibility of a terrorist attack or hijacking was also another theory that emerged when Flight MH370 disappeared. Concerns about such events existed globally, and the disappearance of MH370 only heightened these fears. However, the identities of the passengers and the subsequent investigations narrowed down the likelihood of a terrorist attack or hijacking. From the moment the plane disappeared, research on this theory found no evidence linking any terrorist group or sabotage operation to the event. This led to the decline of the terrorism theory. Years have passed since the disappearance of the plane, but the families of the missing continue to fight for the truth behind their loved one's fate. The families of the passengers remain patiently waiting for a solution to this tragic event and for answers about the whereabouts of the missing plane. Every day, new searches are being conducted in hopes of finding more wreckage and gathering more information about the lost flight. However, without a definitive conclusion on the plane lost in the depths of the ocean, the families have not lost hope. Despite this, the mystery behind the disappearance of flight MH370 remains unsolved. While search efforts in the area where wreckage was found provided clues about the plane's disappearance, no concrete evidence about the lost plane has been uncovered. Despite many theories emerging, aviation experts have acknowledged that this event will likely remain a mystery. The disappearance of MH370 is not only one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history, but also one of the most difficult and challenging questions the world continues to face. Moving forward, efforts to gather more information about the lost plane and solve this great mystery will likely continue. However, until then, the true cause of flight MH370's disappearance will remain a major uncertainty, and this uncertainty will continue to be an agonizing process for the families of the missing passengers.